Digital Assessment 1. Identify, justify, and plan a digital and collaborative learning innovation applied to a specific area of your practice. This assignment made me critically reflect on my practice. I thought of several ideas around what the problem might be. I discussed with colleagues and my mentor teacher, and we finally landed on an idea. I decided that the problem within my practice was that I am not allowing for peer, self, and effective teacher feedback that will enhance students' learning. The light bulb had gone off, and it was time to put my plan of action and goal together. My goal is to use ICT skills to improve feedback in my classroom. I will look at this goal and relate it to 21st century skills. ITR Research 2012 suggests that the purpose of the 21st century learning design rubrics is to help educators identify and understand the opportunities that learning activities give students to build 21st century skills. The first 21st century skill that will help me drive this innovation is using ICT for learning. ITR research suggests that ICT is becoming increasingly common in classrooms and learning environments. It is often used to present or consume information rather than to fundamentally transform learning experiences. They also suggest that the student's use of ICT happens when directly completing all or part of a learning task. I plan to use ICT to help with providing feedback, whether this is self, peer, or teacher, but more on this later. Another 21st century skill that I think relates to this problem is self-regulation. I would like my students to use the feedback provided by peers and teachers and themselves to motivate their learning and to work out what their next steps are and to self-regulate their own learning. Within self-regulation is to plan their own work. Students have opportunities to revise their work based on feedback when feedback is given and explicitly used to improve their work before it is submitted. ITL Rubrics 2012. They also suggest that feedback can be one of the most significant influences on improving learning. Effective feedback helps students to address the gap between current performance and performance goals. The reason I chose feedback strategies as the problem in my practice is I am not providing opportunities to allow students to self or peer assess. Students need to receive a considerable amount of specific descriptive feedback during learning that enables the learner to adjust what he or she is doing in order to improve. Clark and Timperley and Hattie, 2003. Davis and Hill, 2009, argue that there are powerful effects of having descriptive feedback from self, peer, and teacher at every possible opportunity. So who are the stakeholders I need to consider? The first stakeholder I need to consider is the students in my classroom. I also need to consider the whānau and community support that these students are gaining. And the last stakeholder I need to consider is myself. Is this a manageable task for me? So what are my options? The first option I have is to get students to record themselves giving peer or self-assessment. I would also video myself to give assessment. We would then create QR codes and attach the video to these so students can always go back to look at what their feedback is. It will also give the opportunity for whānau at home to look at what the students' feedback might be. The second option is using Google and the Google commenting tool within Google Docs and Google Slides for students to provide peer feedback to each other on the task that they are completing, or again for the teacher. So what are the benefits of each of these and what are the negatives of them? Within the area of my school, most students' parents will have a smartphone at home. However, access to computers and tablets will be more difficult. The disadvantage of using the Google commenting tool would mean that whānau engagement would be lacking. It would be difficult for students to be able to work on their work at home without having access to computers and looking at the feedback and their whānau giving them help. However, like I said before, most of the whānau have smartphones at home, so recording feedback and then turning it into a QR code would mean that students have access to their feedback at home. I am choosing to use QR codes as my innovation, as this will allow for several pedagogical outcomes. It will mean that students can give more peer and self-feedback, families can watch feedback at home and encourage the students to work on their next steps. Students will also be able to use and understand the feedback that's given, as it can be in child speak. Students can self-assess their own learning and will always be able to look back at their next steps to see if they have achieved them. Hill suggests that another useful strategy when it comes to feedback involves recording and using data gained through discussion with students and whānau. By recording feedback and turning them into QR codes, this is what I hope to happen: discussion happening with students and whānau with their next steps. Reference list. Thank you for watching my assignment 1.